Welcome back. We're still looking at the economy on the present administration. It's Democracy Day, so I still have here with me Mr. Udemezue. Thank you very much for staying on.
Pleasure, always.
Yeah, just before we went on that short break, I said we will be looking at the issue of infrastructure. What's your assessment? You heard the president talk about the power generation, 7,500. Is that correct?
The generation has always been very impressive. So the president is correct. I think we could even be doing much more than that in generation. But our problem in Nigeria has remained transmission and distribution. You know, at some point, the distribution companies were privatized by the last government. And even at some point, the central bank, again, was mandated to release some funds to enable them come out of these doldrums they found themselves in. Now, having privatized that sector, the issue now is how do we move forward? Because those who bought the enterprises or the corporations, sooner than later, found or felt that they were deceived. Even though I will not agree, because before you buy anything, you must understand the assets and the liabilities. But maybe the sale process was done hastily. So people bought into the discos, that the distribution companies, from Eko Disco, Ikeja Disco, Enugu Disco, and all of those discos around the country. People bought into them. And of course, government held some level of stakes in these enterprises. But soon after, those who bought listed a litany of challenges that will make them not be able to harness the resources that they acquired. Issues around the price regulations, the amount of price, per unit of energy that people were paying, and even the collectability of this revenue. You have cases where they go to collect, their revenue, and they are being hounded, or they can't even enter some communities. And you can see the movement from post-payment to prepaid meters now to see if they can enhance the collection. So all of these issues have bogged down the distribution companies. And you find that despite a huge, the president mentioned generation, but he didn't say anything about transmission. And that's one thing about this government. I'm sorry to say, it seems I'm knocking them a lot on the head, but they threw a lot of good figures in front of us without, looking at the real issues. We can generate 20,000 megawatts of energy, but if you cannot transmit and distribute them.
Now, where do you think the problem is now with that transmission? Could it be because it's still handled by the government? Government doesn't handle distribution right now. Talking about transmission.
Transmission is, it's still a big, the issue of transmission, again, has to do with the gas problems. To transmit this thing involves a lot of, resources and, investment. And not enough has been done in that area. And these bodies, these transmission companies are also owing a lot. And that's where, when Azora came up with their own power, they said their major strength is that they had negotiated with, I think, LNG, for almost a 20-year contract to supply gas to them, and everything has been paid for. So the issue here is management of these, transmission companies and distribution companies. We need to do better in that. Now we have privatized distribution. The only thing that can happen is for government to appoint a very strong panel that will sit down with these guys and without any political or ethnic or tribal consideration, sit down with them and find out how can we support you. The same way government quickly bails out the banking sector because of their critical nature in our economy. When the banking sector coughs, even today, central bank efforts are made to rescue that sector. Yeah, you talk about the moral hazard and all of that, but I think the power sector in this country is also very important, that I will urge the government to do something, make some appropriation that will bail out. It can be a long-term debt that the investor will still pay. But let it come from government that it is a conscious effort to bail out. Of course, we're talking about bailout and also bail in. But let me even talk about bailout at this point, because otherwise people will say, why don't you do a bail in? Let them bail themselves. Let investors pool money and see how to rescue, maybe change of stakes and all of that. But even government can still do bailout because it's so important. In US, when the economy got so bad, even companies like General Electric and all of that got some bailout from the US government. So as critical, because it is this sector that will drive the whole economy. If you cannot achieve stable power supply in this economy, you cannot drive employment generation. You cannot drive inclusive growth. even though we've talked about even growth, I made mention about the economic growing average of 6% between 2004, 2005 to 2014. It's also good to note. It's still good to note that despite all of that, the growth was not inclusive. The growth did not lead to job creation. And that's why the international community termed Nigeria's growth, or that even when we are among the top fastest growing economy in the world, it was termed a jobless or futureless or baseless growth. Because while the economy was growing in numbers, people were getting more and more unemployed and hungrier.
And the misery index getting higher.
The misery index and all of that were getting higher. So the growth that we are seeking in this economy must be sustainable. It must be inclusive. And to be inclusive, it must not be coming from one source, maybe oil, or even agriculture at the level of Dangote farm, Koschari's farm, which are big projects. But we must trickle that growth down to SMEs, people who run small shops, people who run poultry, who want to refrigerate their birds when they kill them and to sell on their own. You mustn't have to be a passenger farm for you to do agriculture. People who need basic power supply to run their small businesses. When you provide that for them, you see entrepreneurs who will run a 5-man company, 5 staff, 6-man company here. Government do not provide jobs, but private enterprises, micro, small and medium enterprises provide jobs. So if government is thinking positively and strategically, they must do everything possible to make business operations easier for the small man, for the little man in the street. By the time he pulls his cousin, his brothers and friends into that small company where they run a farm, maybe a poultry farm or a fish farming or a cassava, a farm or whatever, you find that many people are pulled away from the jaws of unemployment, and the country will prosper better. The strategy of allowing government to create employment, which we have used in the past, has led to where we are today, that we are carrying a very stupendous and troublesome amount of recurrent expenditure. And that's why we announced such a very big budget in a year, and at the end of the day, you find that nothing is achieved. Our money is being pulled around, and we're even borrowing on top of that, we're borrowing aggressively. At the end of the day, the movement, all the mouths, all the principalities and powers holding us in different government agencies don't allow anything go into capital expenditure. And that's the challenge we're having right now. Even though our Honorable Minister of Finance has said in 2017, we ran a budget that saw 1.5 trillion moving into capital expenditure. My question is, what major project that is strategic can we say that this government has started and completed? But I must commend them for continuing most of the projects, started by the last administration. Most of the road, Lagos, Ibadan, Bini, all those, and even in the north, a lot of jobs are going on. They are going on quite slowly. Even in Enugu, Port Harcourt, they are going on so slowly. And it appears that once elections are about to come, they pull equipment to those places just to make us feel nice. But there's no sincere devotion to building this infrastructure. In aviation, and very importantly in education, the ERGP says one of the critical objectives is to build human capital. When Bill Gates came here a few months ago, he mentioned that when it became a very big news, we have constantly said it even in this studio, that without mental infrastructure, without building human capital, no nation can achieve progressive or sustainable growth and development. And that must be noted. And how do you build human capital? You must spend reasonably, pay good attention to the educational sector, and of course the health sector, because health is wealth. If you are healthy, you are productive in the economy. So what project have we done, has this government done, to ensure that we don't do medical tourism anymore, going to India or China or Germany or America to go and receive ordinary medical procedures? What have we done in that direction? What have we done to better equip our federal universities to enlarge their capacity to admit more students? Every year, almost 1 million or more people take JAMB. Only about 200,000 or 1/5 of that, are admitted. That's quite a shame. What have we done? If you go to most of the universities, whether it's University of Ibadan, University of Nigeria, or University of Lagos, all those, apart from the fact that University of Lagos somehow, because they are in city of excellence, they found a way to generate revenue and help themselves. You go to certain universities like UNN, Ibadan, and OAU, you find that federal government is doing little or nothing to build infrastructure in these places. You see classrooms that we used, as young as we are, abandoned like that. Even libraries are not equipped. Laboratories still have chemicals that were just more than 20 years ago, and these things have expired. You just show the student this is ammonium chloride. We just show you. Oh, it's no longer, it can no longer react and show. And so the libraries are still having books written in 1970, economic books. When current economic thoughts are coming out, you are still reading books written in 1980. So government has not done enough to build infrastructure in the. Until you build the educational sector, you cannot lay claim to human capital. How much are you also training people consciously through grants? We have the Industrial Training Fund, which is also operational by now. But what effort are they making to partner with the private sector to ensure that newly employed people, those who are leaving the universities, are constantly trained at some point, and those who train, is government encouraging them by tax incentives? If you train and you can show a good record of that, can you comfortably go to ITF or any government institute and show evidence of that and get some rebate? So we can build human capital. The world is going global, and we have to play at that level of innovation and creativity to
Mr. Oji, let me take you back to the issue of the budget. What's your assessment of our budgeting process? Because a lot of people have argued that there's never a time the issue of budget comes up. Up to now, the budget has not been signed.
Yeah, because I said earlier that those who govern us usually have a lot of personal agenda. They place their personal interest, personal service above national service. And that's where there's always a lot of subterfuge, mudslinging, a lot of infighting that goes on with the budget process. This budget, by the way, was presented to this National Assembly last year,
November.
And we always do. From the last government, the previous one, we always start the budgeting process the year before the next budget. We always do. But somehow, between the executive and the legislature, the Senate and the House of Representatives, between them and their game playing and their self-interest and their ego, personal ego, they keep going back and forth with it and forget that this is not about them. This is about the lives of the poor woman, the poor man who are in the villages who cannot get medical service, women who die while giving birth to their children, young people who are pulling out of school, people who wake up in the morning and cannot find food to eat. They forget that this budget is about their lives and not about them who have cornered this nation and taking us hostage. And in that game playing, you see the budget not passed. March, April, May. This one was just passed, was it not this month? May. The president is yet to consent. Even though we have a constitutional provision that makes it compulsory, the budget must start running at least before June 30. So through arm twisting, you may see the thing now reluctantly signed by the president, because I'm not sure the president is very comfortable with the increase in that budget. Even though, if you look at that increase, you will find that it went more into productive spend, like infrastructure and all of that. But I was even looking at why increase the budget, because you estimated that you get more money from oil, when you had already planned to do a deficit budget, and you see more money coming in. Why still increase it? Why not, reduce your deficit and carry less debt? This country is going back to a level where very soon we'll face with debt overhang or debt trap once again. And that's dangerous for us. Okay. But you see that all that is happening because election is next year. And as usual, you see that the appropriations will likely, be halted and more money dubiously pushed towards election activities.
All right, so now, just before I let you go, you talked about election coming up next year. What do you think this government can actually do differently between now and...
Before I talk about election, let me talk about the high level of insecurity in this country. You cannot conduct elections where people are not even settled. Like if you look at Benue State and some parts of Middle Belt, people are not living in their houses. We hear that in the night, people go to some central place where they could get protection from some community, and then they go back in the morning. That's not how to live. In the current state of security in this country, you cannot conduct an election successfully. So I'm urging the federal government, in the name of God, to stop the heavy level of bloodletting, sustained killings of innocent people in their farms, in their worship places, in the mosques, in the churches. These killings must stop, whether it is by duplicity or complicity of the security forces, the military, quite shamefully. Every military anywhere in the world is seen to hold high level of integrity. The military, the police, they must stop that so that the election can progress. And the infighting in APC, Congresses, PDP and all of that It's giving very bad red signs for 2019 election.
All right, thank you very much for your time, Mr. Oji Udemezue.
Thanks so much, my pleasure.
Financial and Management Consultant and the CEO of Flame Academy and Consulting Limited. We'll take a quick break. When we return, the Chief Executive Officer, Central Securities Clearance System, speaks of the company's growth plans. Do stay with us.